Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we just do it. And by just do it, we mean share our picks for the best Nike commercials of all time. Lace up your Jordans and prepare to get schooled.
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, where we simplify the world of marketing for humans. I'm Shad Connolly, and you may be wondering, how do I bring my podcasting A-game every time? It's got to be the shoes.
It's got to be the shoes.
You know, my podcasting shoes.
Yeah. And I'm Patrick Jebber, and I wear Nike because they were everywhere when I was a kid. Not subliminal messaging, straight up in yo face marketing.
Beating you over the head with it, huh? On today's episode, we're listing our top 3 commercials from a brand that has mastered the medium, Nike. As you can tell, I've got a little bit of a summer cold, Patrick, so I might sound a little bit funny, but I'll try not to let it cramp my enthusiasm for our topic of today's show. Now, we've done these list shows, where we create a list of our favorite of something a few times. What would you say, like 10 or 12 times or something like that?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So we've done quite a few of them. I get used to the process. I enjoy these shows a lot. But this list, this was probably the hardest list I've ever had to make. How about you? How did you think of the process of making the list of your favorite Nike commercials of all time?
I thought it was a little easier than it normally is just because there's a lot to choose from.
I think that was one of the hard things. I mean, there were so many of these, and they go back, you're talking to like 80s, 90s, they're still rolling out all these different kind of known and memorable things. So I was fighting between like memory and nostalgia, and I don't know, it was just really tough for me to actually choose and then narrow it down to 3.
Yeah, I kept mine though. I kept mine very strict to the 3. It's like 3 wishes, right?
Yeah, totally did something different. I have a bunch I'm going to try to squeeze in there just because I need to give them a shout out. I couldn't let go of. And my, even the order I had them placed in, I probably shifted it like 10 times. And if I had to make it again next week, I'd probably make a totally different list. So it's interesting. It sounds like we had a very different experience doing this. What's your perceptions of Nike and how has it been since through the years? We obviously both grew up on these commercials.
Yeah, I really do like Nike as a brand. I mean, once upon a time, they were the only sneakers. You see how I said sneakers? Tennis shoes or tennies. I don't know what everyone
None
else
of those things I don't think are cool to say. I don't know what the kids are saying these days, but it's not sneakers and it's
they're kicks.
Tennies.
They're kicks. They say kicks, I think. But the brand was just so ingrained in our childhood in the 80s. The cool athletes that were promoting them at the time, it was a status thing. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I remember going back to, looking at a lot of these commercials again. It's so funny how many of them are just stuck in my brain, or I can just, remember seeing on TV over and over and over again. I mean, Nike is just one of the biggest brands of our time, and they certainly have one of the biggest commercial presences of any brand, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you show that Nike swoosh to anyone, they would know what that is. Anywhere in the world, even third world countries.
Yeah, it's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. And like I said, the amount of sheer volume of commercials and TV spots they run is kind of insane, which leads me, here's a question for you. Do you think, is Nike the best producer of commercials of all time?
No, I wouldn't say that they're the best. I think you could probably find a lot of competition out there in terms of commercials, but probably in the sports arena, they probably have the most. So you'd have a lot to choose from, Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it. I think they're in the conversation, though. When I look at the iconic commercials they've made over the years, it's probably them and some other big brands like McDonald's or Coca-Cola, Budweiser, or something like that for just sheer volume and the amount of memorable or iconic commercials they produce. They're definitely in the conversation, I think.
Yeah. So talking a little bit about that history and the impact of Nike commercials, what do you think about that, in terms of their historical value?
I think it's just such a huge part of the brand, and the brand recognition has come. It's amazing from TV and TV commercials. Not that they don't do other forms of marketing, but that's just, I think, what people would immediately think of with the brand are the swoosh And at least one of the commercials, I think, would be kind of the first things that pop into people's minds.
Yeah, I think so too. And like I said before, Nike has done a really great job of consistently being in front of people, humans. They have a knack for picking up memorable sports figures or fantastic up-and-comers. You know what I mean? The brand has become legendary, in my opinion, in status.
Yeah, they got Jordan before he really became Jordan. Some would say they made him into Jordan. But, that's been a huge part of what they do. And they do everything big and epic and, a lot of money spent.
Yeah, and I mean, even besides for the celebrities they've signed, they continue to deliver the messaging and that reinforces the marketing they've done for years, like the Just Do It and It's the Shoes. They've become household memes almost, everyday conversational phrases, just do it. In the back of their mind, they're thinking about Nike as they're saying that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. And maybe one of the best, if not the best, brand tagline of all time.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get ready to talk about our top 3 lists and share our picks. But before we dive into those, let's take a quick moment to get a word from our sponsor.
Speaking Human is sponsored by Monsters Unlimited, a creative agency with a business brain. When you want to build a colossal brand like the one mentioned in today's episode, choose the creative beasts at Monsters Unlimited. Monsters Unlimited specializes in branding and will breathe fire into your business by developing brand nurturing strategies focused on your projects and your brand goals. So what are you waiting for? Visit thinkmonsters.com for more information.
I run 17 miles every morning. People ask me how I keep my teeth from chattering in the wintertime. I leave them in my locker.
That was a clip from the first Nike commercial to use the tagline, Just Do It, way back in 1988. Will that ad make our list for the best Nike commercials of all time? You're about to find out.
We'll start with our number 3s and we'll count back like we like to do for, dramatic effect.
When I look back, there are some that I remember more vividly, and some that when I look back, I vaguely remember, but the impact it has now in my life is greater because of my perspective has changed. Like the If You Let Me Play ad spot from 1995 does that for me. I remember this spot, but I was 18 at the time, and being a teenager, this didn't really affect me all that much. But being an adult and having a daughter of my own now, it speaks to me. When I look back and I go, oh yeah, I remember that, and then I see it now, it makes me appreciate what Nike has done on occasion through its marketing. It inspires people to be better, and this one's really no different. It's speaking to parents and adults mostly, and the message is pretty clear. Let your girls play sports. It's not just for boys. I sort of get that messaging from it, and I think this one's pretty powerful. How about you, Shad?
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's one I didn't quite remember until I was kind of doing research for this list, and it's just as powerful now, but it goes with that Nike message, which is, just do it, get out there, take the opportunities. And it kind of has this spin on it though, because it's talking about an important issue of the day. That's not something Nike typically does in its commercials, which I think gives it a little more power for it.
Yeah, for sure. How about you? What's your number 3?
Well, let me start off, before I say my number 3, let me say this. Going into this, I had a very strong memory of the Michael Jordan ads of the 80s and 90s for Nike as that being iconic Nike. So I thought there's probably going to be a Jordan ad on my list. There might be multiple Jordan ads on my list. I particularly remember the Jordan Mars Blackman, aka Spike Lee series of commercials they did. I remember those pretty vividly. So I was like, okay, let's watch some of these. I'm definitely going to put one or more of these on my list. And then I went back and watched them, and they don't hold up very well at all. Have you watched any? Did you watch any of those commercials?
Yeah, going back and reviewing them again, they definitely don't have the same impact as they did then.
No, for how, important they were at the time or just like, essential to that time period. Now watching them, even all the Jordan commercials, there were a few good ones, but most of the Jordan commercials I was just unimpressed with. They seemed self-important, and some of them were very annoying. Some of the Jordan Mars Blackman's one, I was like, God, why did anybody ever like this?
Yeah.
It just kind of, it's one of those things, you look back on something once time has passed and you're like, ugh. And this is just one of those situations for me. It made me realize maybe those aren't the iconic Jordan commercials. Maybe it's like the Like Mike Gatorade commercial or the McDonald's commercial where he was shooting hoops to Larry Bird. Mm-hmm. Those might be the iconic ones, but it definitely wasn't one of these. So that being said, I just had to throw that in there because it was such a striking thing to me. And I know how important those ads have been to Nike over time. Even, going up into the 2000s, they were using Jordan in ads. What I did pick for my number 3 comes from another basketball player of the time, Charles Barkley. And that's the I Am Not a Role Model ad. This was black and white ad, just close up of Charles Barkley with him, flat out declaring, I'm not a role model to your kids. I play basketball. Somebody else can be a role model. It's not me. And it's going to intercut with shots of him playing basketball hardcore. Like I said, it's all been black and white, and it just creates, the Nike thing around Barkley's personality and, carved him out and defined him in this unique way, which Nike has been so good at doing. We talked about their work with some of these star athletes and how they bring out their personalities and kind of create this brand around them in their ads is one of the really unique kind of things they do. And I think this is probably one of the best examples of it. It's really different and it's controversial at the time ad and has a talking point, attached to it. But I thought it was still pretty effective and it's a good spot.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about this one is that it's always been said that sports figures are role models, and they have to treat their celebrity status with that respect. And for them to have a commercial that says that I am not a role model is basically going against that whole concept. And I thought it was pretty interesting in terms of the contrast from Michael Jordan's ads, where he was a role model and where kids looked up to him. And Charles Barkley spot basically was saying, no, I'm the opposite of that. And the fact that those can all live underneath one brand is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the fascinating things. It was a Nike commercial pushing back against what Nike did in a lot of its commercials at the time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good pick.
So that's my number 3. What's your number 2, Patrick?
Well, it's interesting. You had just brought up the whole Michael Jordan thing, and I had the same feeling that, they didn't have the impact that I thought they would when I was watching them again. But Michael Jordan's failure is probably one of my most favorite Nike ads, maybe even one of my favorite ad spots of all time. I won't say it's my number 1, but I will say it's probably in my top 10 because it has a message that resonates with anyone. That failure is something that is a part of life, but with hard work can lead to success, but also to other failures. It's not like these people who have this legendary status have never failed. It's not that they're never going to fail again. And using Michael Jordan, who some would argue is the best basketball player of all time, or at least our generation, was genius in that. People thought of him as a winner, not as a failure. So I think this marketing message puts success into perspective.
That's a good one. That I would actually say, like going back and watching a whole bunch of the Jordan ones, that was far and away to me the best one and the one I thought held up the most of them all from that time period. And it's interesting. I also saw, somebody on some website where they had like a collection of a bunch of these made the good point. It's Nike is so amazing they can position Michael Jordan as an underdog. This guy who had more incredible success than any other athlete. And they, in this commercial, I think from like 97 or around there, they positioned him as the underdog, and success is all a result of failure, but great message attached to it and really well put together commercial that was less about, Jordan, the basketball player than Jordan, the man.
Yeah. So what do you have on your number 2?
My number 2 is an ad I had seen at the time it came out, but didn't totally, it wasn't stuck in my mind as super memorable, but when I watched it again, I just kept coming back to it and back to it. And this is it aired during the 2008 Olympics. It's the Courage ad. And basically what this is a really interesting commercial because it's just this abstract footage-based commercials where you're just getting flashes, images of like athletes, interspersed with other sort of images, but just like an image a second flashing at you for the entire minute while the Killer song, All These Things I've Done, which probably is one of my favorite songs of all time, so I'm predisposed to like this commercial, but just plays over it. So the way it's put together, it's different than other Nike commercials, but it just tells the Just Do It story by showing these images, of Lance Armstrong sweating and Michael Jordan hugging the trophy and, Serena falling on the tennis court. I think LeBron James is in there. But then you also have cheetahs running and like buffaloes running, a flower opening, a small baby. It's just all this like basically epitome of just doing it, just like this is innately inside of us. Let's just do these things. And it comes together in a strange and really inspirational sort of way. The way it plays, though, it's definitely a grabber, especially in that realm of commercials.
I feel like that one was one of those where it was more abstract in some of the imagery. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting culmination of different imagery that conveyed the message, like you said, of just doing it. Yeah, I think that was a good pick.
It all comes at you really lightning quick. I didn't, it wasn't one I had in mind. I was predisposed to before making this list, but I kind of kept watching it over and over, and just the images, are hypnotizing and mixed with that Killer song where you're kind of hearing the line, I've got soul, but I'm not a soldier, over and over as you see these things. And then it ends on a shot of a guy just running super fast and the tagline, Just Do It. And I thought it was just the best commercial epitome of that Just Do It concept, that tagline that I think is one of maybe the best brand tagline of all time. I'm not sure.
That one, too, kind of reminds me that Nike has a great way of being very artistic in the execution of their ads,
They do. It's surprising when you watch a lot of them, and they even get, some big name directors in for some of the more cinematic, commercials I mentioned, but they take some sort of creative chances and do some different things that really pay off, like in this sense. And I really like the ones that have some sort of real footage, just kind of use footage in there. I think that's something effective too. So here we are already at the number one spot.
I feel like it came so fast.
Well, I think we usually do top fives, and this time it was a top three, so it's a little tighter.
I know that really bothers you because you had a lot of them that you wanted to.
I would have crushed a top five list. A top three was just too hard for me.
You're like, hey Patrick, can we do a top 15?
How about a top 200?
We could do that if we were doing all-time YouTube videos.
That's true. Which we already did, I think.
Yeah. So my number one, you'll remember because it wasn't all that long ago, was from 2012, Find Your Greatness. And this one was beautifully simple in its execution, but hauntingly complex in its overall message.
Poetry, man.
Yeah. I'm drawn to these ones, and like I said in the beginning, mine have a common theme that runs through them. These messages that impact anyone, just an average person, you, me, we're not sports figures, we're not extreme athletes, we're not doing things that are breaking boundaries. But this commercial, this ad spot digs deep into our psyches. The entire campaign is built around personal greatness and that it can be achieved by anyone on a personal level, which is so different than most sports ads. They're talking mostly about that specific celebrity, not about you as a person. And this one just hit home. I mean, the one that was the main spot that they showed was the boy running down that long rural road.
It's like an isolated road. Yeah, you only hear kind of the sound of crickets.
That was the original spot, but then you can actually find all of the other spots that they did that surrounds this campaign, and they're all just so well done. I mean, they're not all as powerful as I feel that one was, but they all have that impact that you just feel something, And that's how I feel like what you're trying to do with any ad spot is to, whatever it is, make people feel something.
Yeah, that's a fantastic pick, and I'm really glad you brought it up because this is one of the spots that I anguished over. This is one of the ones that I felt like I should have it on my list. It was on my list, then it wasn't on my list. It's my first honorable mention listed, and I think my note I have is the most human of all Nike commercials, and I probably should have it higher. because it does just everything you said. It's different from the other, or most of the famous Nike spots, because it spotlights the trier, not some famous athlete. It's the underdog. It's the person who's just slapping on the shoes and trying to go, and it's really effective, especially that kid, watching that kid. He starts out far away down the road. It's a still shot of just him coming towards the camera, as you have this narration that's telling you greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. Very effective. Great number one. I don't know that it shouldn't be my number one. It's not. It's a first in my honorable mentions, but it's barely. This is one of the ones that I felt like, how could this not be on my list?
So what's your number one then? You got to tell me what your number one is. If that's not your number one, what is, Shad? What could possibly be better than that one?
It kind of came as a surprise to me. The Tiger Woods bouncing a golf ball commercial from 1999. It's one that I immediately remembered in my mind. It's one that I knew was going to be on my list, but I didn't think it would be my number one. So that was a surprise to me, but it's just so good. It's simple. It's strange for a Nike ad in that it's improvisatory. And basically what it is you're just seeing Tiger Woods. It's also a still shot, just standing there. It's shot from the ground level, and he is just doing something that I find amazing. He's just bouncing a golf ball on a golf club. Bouncing it, going through his legs. It's like hacky sack, but he's doing this all with a golf club. And he gets it to sit still on the golf club, then he launches it back up. The whole thing's really hypnotizing, but the end is the kicker. He just eventually uses the golf club to throw the ball in the air and then hits the ball in midair with perfect form. And it was all real. No CGI. I remember at the time being like, that can't be real. That cannot be real. It's just amazing. And that was in 1999. Watching it again in 2016, I think the same thing. The wow factor is still there. And I was like, it's hard to remember what Tiger Woods was, but he was like huge. And he was huge for Nike, and especially in the realm of golf. But it's just so good. It's 30 seconds where you can't look away. And it's just really representative of what Nike was all about. And this sort of, finding these great figures and putting them out there and just even showing you these moments of wonder, which is really what all these commercials are talking about, whether in an inspirational or celebrity way. It's about that, finding your greatness. And here is a moment of greatness, like a real moment of greatness caught on film.
I'd agree with you. That commercial is great. And what I liked about that specific commercial is that they pull in sports figures from every sport. Once upon a time, a lot of it was basketball or football, maybe baseball. And the fact that they were able to really put Tiger Woods, this young golfer, on a pedestal and bring golf into the limelight. Like you said before, they can almost make somebody be that person that we all aspire to be. But it was one of those things where it was so captivating. It is a great ad spot for that reason.
You can't look away. It's just that what I call raw brilliance, wasn't supposed to be a commercial. He was shooting another commercial, and he was messing around, I guess, trying to, impress people on set, and he just started doing it. And that's how it became a commercial. But obviously somebody smart saw that this is something. This is something we need to capture that epitomizes a lot of the ideas we're trying to get across.
Yeah. And in this day and age, with YouTube and with social media, that rawness that came from that, I think, is a testament to how they were already at the cutting edge of that before it ever became a thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's a good point, because that was right before that happened, where you were seeing a lot more of that, or getting the behind-the-scenes glimpse, That's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
So I know you have some honorable mentions.
You forewent honorable mentions altogether, right?
The things I remember, like the Bono's commercial.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny now if you watch it. That's one of my honorables just for its iconic place, is the Bono's. The other one's the basketball freestyle video, which you might remember. It's like the sound of squeaking sneakers and people dancing and bouncing balls and making a rhythm out of that.
Yeah, I love that commercial.
Play it all the time. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. And then the other one is Snow Day, which is a more recent one that features a ton of athletes. And it's one of these more cinematic ones, which I'd recommend everybody just watch it because it's a pretty enjoyable watch. But the real one I want to talk about, this is the second part of my struggle. The Find Your Greatness was the first part of my struggle. The second part of my struggle was the Worth the Wait video that Nike just produced after the Cavaliers won the championship. This one probably gave me the greatest grief because it could have easily been my number one. It's my favorite of all these commercials. I watch it and it just, for me, caught what was this transcendent moment in sports. Just kind of captured the way it was. Like, I can remember watching that Game 7 and be like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Just captures that in such an emotional way. And I wanted it on my list. And it could have easily been number one, but there were kind of two reasons I didn't. One was I just couldn't trust it. It's like, am I just having a personal reaction to this? Because, that was a moment that I felt, and it's reflected here.
Yeah.
And then the second reason was just recency bias. It just happened. So I was like, maybe in 5 to 10 years, if I rewatch this, would I think the same thing? I don't know. But it's an incredible ad, very well constructed, captures all this emotional and inspirational ideas and the fact that what sports can be or what it can mean to people in a really, really powerful way.
I'm not exactly sure why that or Find Your Greatness wasn't your number one, because you struggle with both of them. One of them had to be number one, I thought. Anyway, no, I think that's a great pick and definitely be number one because that it has that emotional impact. To capture people's emotions, sincere, heartfelt emotions, that's a really difficult thing to do. When someone shows emotion like that, you can't deny it for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's hard for me a lot of times to narrow it down when I have, say 5 things that I love. Pick the 3 that you love the most. But you're good at it.
I'm much better at it than summer movie picks for sure.
Yeah, you got commercials down. You're just a cold-hearted dude where you can leave these commercials behind and never look at them again. I can't do it. So anyways, those are our definitive top 3 Nike commercials of all time. Take it as you will.
Good stuff there, though. Good stuff.
Yeah, always is, and it's always interesting to see how our lists differ from one another, which they always do. They're almost always never the same.
Sometimes we have some overlap, but I think the reasons we're picking them are the same. It's just, a slightly different perspective.
That's actually a good point because that's really true. We usually give a lot of the same reasons, but pick a lot of different commercials.
Yeah, so this is our time where we share our top takeaway for brands. And you know what? Today, I want you to share your top takeaway first today.
So let's start here. Nike's been one of the most prolific producers of commercials over the past 4 decades. They create big budget commercials featuring big stars that air during the world's biggest sporting events. They operate on a marketing and advertising scale beyond what 99.9% of companies could ever imagine. So what could your brand possibly learn from Nike commercials? I think it comes down to one word: confidence. This is a brand completely confident in its identity and its message. Just do it. Find your greatness. Be motivated and inspired. Slap on your Nikes and get out there. Whether they're showing us the top athletes of the moment or everyday people just giving it their all, the brand consistency of Nike commercials is amazing. They experiment, and they try different things creatively and they take different approaches, but they always appear to know and effectively present exactly who they are. That powerful beating brand heart is always at the center. So that's the key takeaway here. Thoroughly and boldly define your brand and run with it.
I love that confidence and having confidence in your brand. And this isn't something that we've ever talked about before in the past. A lot of our takeaways sort of overlap, and sometimes they maybe are even very similar from episode to episode. My top takeaway is this, Shad. Build a brand that you can be proud of. Just look at Nike. This brand deals in sports apparel, shoes, whatever. But it doesn't limit its messaging to that. Its marketing over the years, they've had fun with it and they've been serious with it. But the consistent element is that they've built a brand that believes in something bigger. That's how brands become colossal, like Nike, because even when they're small in stature, they're thinking bigger. They're always thinking outside of themselves. They're always thinking about the bigger picture, and they strive to make a difference, whether it's in their marketing or their mission. So that's my top takeaway. Build a brand that you could be proud of.
I think that's a great one. Obviously, they work very much in tandem, and we talk a lot about tactics and ideas, and techniques that work, but that's one of those things that goes a little deeper. When you're talking about doing something and being something that's inspirational or helpful or a difference maker, that makes all the difference for what you're doing and your people who are actually doing it.
And it interweaves through everything that you do in your brand. So when you feel that you're building something bigger and you're trying to make a difference, that shines through. And people see that, you know what I mean? And when people see you being passionate and trying to make a difference, they pick you. They pick your brand. They pick your product. They pick your service because you have that something that nobody else has. You have that difference, you know?
Yeah, and you see that in all the Nike size brands out there. You know, they all have those attributes you're talking about. So that's a key part of it. I got to tell you what I'm most impressed about with our final takeaways is neither one of us said, just do it.
Just do it. I don't know why I would say it like that, but
So it's good we didn't do that.
it's probably a good idea. So, yeah, those are all great elements to the Nike brand.
And fun time going back and looking at all those Nike commercials. I could do it for hours. I think it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's definitely a walk down memory lane for sure. Memory lane, because I'm an 80-year-old man again on this episode. Just take a walk down memory lane.
You do. Sometimes I go down memory lane and I just see you strolling, like pacing back and forth. I'm like, what is he doing?
I'm kind of like the old man in the first Just Do It commercial where he's running over that bridge. I believe it's like in San Francisco, and he's like, people ask me how I keep my teeth from chattering in the cold because I do all this running. I just take them out.
So if you see Patrick pacing on memory lane without his teeth in, pocket full of Werthers, go up and say hi. Say you listen to the podcast.
Well, everyone, that's it for today's episode, apparently. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast at speakinghuman.com. You can also listen and subscribe to Speaking Human on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and Google Play.
You can also email us with your list of the top 3 Nike commercials of all time. Love to see some different opinions on that. Or any questions or comments, feedback at thinkmonsters.com. That's feedback at thinkmonsters.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking Human.
Have it, Daddy.
This is bigger than the game of basketball. This is about all of Northeast Ohio, everybody. Whether you come from Lakewood, from Avon, from Menor, Akron, we were with LeBron, we were with Kyrie and JR. We were right there with them. I almost don't know what to say right now. I'm looking at the fans. I don't know if they know what to do. It's been 50 years. Come on, we can celebrate, people. We're the champs.